And I want to start by welcoming this motion and commending Deputy Funchion for her work on it, but indeed also to acknowledge the Minister's breakthrough in securing such an increase in funding and for his vision in setting out some necessary reforms of the early years education and care system. From a Labour perspective, however, we believe that neither the motion nor the core funding stream proposed go far enough. In other words, that more could be done. And it's in that spirit that we put forward the addendum to the motion, calling further on the government, agreeing with what's in the motion, but calling further on the government to guarantee a preschool place for every child and to begin the rollout of a universal public childcare system. And I think that addendum, which I hope won't be opposed, really seeks to just strengthen the commitments made both by the Minister and indeed by Deputy Funchion and her colleagues in putting forward the motion. Because I think all of us acknowledge that the current system of early years education and care provision in Ireland is failing parents, it's failing staff in the sector, it's failing providers, and most of all it's failing children who are not getting an equal start in life. And so for us in Labour, we want to see a total restructuring of the sector to provide for the creation of a system of universal and public childcare. And in respect of the core funding stream, we do think it provides an important and long overdue building block, a starting point for the sector, but again, more needs to be done. And I think in particular, and like all of us, I'm hearing daily from parents who are deeply concerned about the cost of childcare, the cost of creches, and about the really a lack of certainty as to whether or not those fees will be frozen or indeed preferably reduced, because, and I think that's acknowledged in the motion, if they were to be frozen it would be at this unsustainably high level for so many parents. So as I say, I do commend you, Minister, for delivering on the €221 million core funding stream, and I do also want to acknowledge the commitment to ensuring that 138 million of that will go towards improving pay and conditions for early years educators. And indeed I want to commend SIP2's Big Start campaign that has been so actively engaged in seeking to strengthen the pay and conditions of educators. But while we want to see even more ambition for the early years sector, we do appreciate that pending the success of the Joint Labour Committee, the new core funding stream can offer a real base upon which to build a better system with better outcomes. But we believe, as the motion says, and indeed I agree with this, that the Minister should commit to increasing wages and addressing the fees issue, regardless of the outcome of that JLC process. And per our amendment, we believe a meaningful process should also be initiated and committed to guarantee a place for every child and to introduce that system of universal public childcare that we so badly need. Speaking on the fees issue first, the spiralling fees we see and that we hear about daily from parents would be unsustainable in any case. But given that we're seeing a very serious cost of living crisis with really serious rises in inflation and increases in housing cost, in rents, and for so many people unaffordable prices in fuel, in energy and in food, it's a particularly difficult time, therefore, to be looking at such high childcare places. And I think we're all very conscious that Ireland has the second highest OECD household spend on childcare costs. So couples spending an average of 24% of their income and single parents 29% on fees. Parents in Dublin paying around €1,000 per month per child. Any of us who've had children in childcare in Dublin and in my own constituency are well aware of that cost, some €1,000 or more. And that's if we can get a place. And again, I'm hearing also from so many parents who are having to book childcare places in anticipation of a child's birth, women and parents who simply cannot get a childcare place and are worried about whether or not they can return to work where they wish to do so, and yet are being really stifled in their own career progression. And I think we're all conscious that with approximately 300,000 children in the preschool age group and around 2/3 of them using some form of childcare service at present, this is a major crisis. So at a minimum a fee freeze is necessary, although we do agree with the motion that the reduction would be preferable. On the wages and the pay and conditions. I've already paid tribute to SIP2's Big Start campaign, and we saw this year's report on the pay and conditions of job satisfaction of early years professionals, showing again that those tasked with educating our children at this key developmental stage are among the most undervalued workers in society, and I think you've acknowledged that, Minister. I think we're all well aware of that. Pay is well below a living wage for many educators, who often also lack basic rights like sick pay and maternity pay. And this came to the fore in the government's sick pay proposal, which we've been calling for some time, and my colleague Senator Marie Sherlock has been to the fore on that. But we are concerned that those working in the early childhood care and education sector, because many of them are seasonal, employed for part of a year, will not be covered by the government scheme because it envisages a 13-week entitlement period before workers can access it. So that's just one example, in our view, of the poor conditions faced by many educators. And we know from SIP2 that 67% of early years educators report work-related stress and burnout, and an overwhelming 90% saying they struggle to make ends meet. And we know that this is a basic issue of women's rights, of gender equality, because 98% of early years professionals are women who are bearing the brunt of an underfunded system. And I'd like to mention we have an area representative in Ratoath, County Meath, Eilish Balfe, who's been very much to the fore in highlighting the crisis in the sector, and who tells me that there are very serious closures and indeed shortfalls in service if things do not improve for those working within the service, those professionals working in the service. So I want to turn to Labour's addendum to this motion, which, as I say, seeks to build on and strengthen the intent behind the motion, which we support. It is based on our policy and the Equal Early Years campaign that's been led by Labour women, calling for a universal public childcare system and seeing this as a matter of women's equality. We know that women in Ireland spend about 20 hours more per week on care and housework than men, and we know that providing a place for every child will ease the burden significantly, particularly on women who are working outside the home. And I should add, I'm grateful to colleagues in the arts who tell me that a recent survey on parents in the screen industry, for example, shows that there are particular issues with access to childcare supports for those working on freelance contracts, those working long and unsociable hours or irregular hours. And that characterises not just people working in the arts, but many other sectors where, again, there's moving to a universal public system would really, really support them. And of course, it's a matter of children's rights as well as of women's rights, because inequality in Ireland, we know, starts the day a baby is born, and that should not be how it is in a real republic. I've called for a Donna O'Malley moment for early years education and care, just as 50 years ago Minister O'Malley guaranteed a state-funded secondary school place for everyone. So too we need to move to guarantee a publicly funded childcare place for every child, a preschool place for every child, to guarantee them an equal start. And that's the change we've been seeking with our Equal Early Years campaign, to develop a universal public system, starting with a €96 million investment in the first year, targeted first at the needs of parents who wish to work outside of the home but cannot do so because of the prohibitive cost of childcare. And we believe that the over-reliance in Ireland on the for-profit market-driven model should be replaced by one which is state-led and universal, which relies on community childcare settings in particular. I should say, Minister, that I, like many other, I'm sure many of us, have received a significant number of emails in recent days from providers, and many of them very small providers of childcare services and early years education, who have outlined concerns about funding. And I think many of us appreciate their concerns, but I think we're all hopeful that they will engage with the process of reforming the system, because I think we're all conscious, as I said, that the system is not working for them as providers in many cases, but nor is it working for those parents who are facing these massive costs in childcare fees, and clearly it's not working for those staff and professionals in the sector, nor of course is it working for children, because if we don't have an effective, adequate service, if many parents simply can't access places for their children, then we know it's not working for children. So I urge this House to support our amendment, or our addendum, I should say, to the motion, because we have so much to gain from moving to a genuinely radical reform of our early years services, and indeed of our school-age childcare service. And I think it's right to mention that as a very important facet or component of any equal early years and childcare service. An enviable system is achievable. We've seen it achieved in other jurisdictions, Minister. Minister. We can have a system which guarantees flexible drop-off times and collections to reflect modern work practices and commutes. We can ensure a system based on best practice for education, play and early learning that really strengthens and supports every child's development. And we can support those smaller private providers who currently do face high costs associated with running a smaller setting and who are fearful about change. And we can place an emphasis on community-based affordable care where professionals are well paid and provide the highest standard of care. And indeed we can alleviate the administrative load on services through a new funding model. All of this is possible, and I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to debate this in this House this evening and ask for support for the addendum, as we will indeed support the motion. Thank
you.